So welcome. My name is Anthony Chow, the director of the San Jose State High School, and we are delighted and honored to be hosting today's event. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the high school celebration of Native American Heritage Month and our symposium on Native American library services. Today's theme is honoring the historical and current lives of Indigenous people. Before we continue, Donna has agreed to start us off with the prayer. Donna?
Thank you, Doctor. Hama Nagananyan Donna Cassette. I just want to say a little prayer this morning, both in Paiute and a little bit in English. Tana Tukubukoi Miakai Pisha Koits Tawanum Kakwa. Our Father above us, bless us for this day. Bless all of the students who are here to learn and get a higher understanding and experience of our Indigenous cultures. And if you travel, we pray that you travel safely. And if you have families, we pray that you're able to communicate effectively and in a loving way. And you all have safe journeys in wherever you go. Kihwa, all my relations.
Thank you so much, Donna. I want to give also special thanks to Alejandro Palacios, Vivian Zhou, and Iori Sakunaga for their role in helping us organize today's event. And of course, always Alfredo Alcantar for his fearless technology, leadership, and support. Before we continue, I want to do an SJSU area land acknowledgement for the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. The San Jose State University community recognizes that the present-day Muwekma Ohlone tribe, with an enrolled Bureau of Indian Affairs documented membership of over 550, is comprised of all of the known surviving American Indian lineages aboriginal to the San Francisco Bay Area region, who trace their ancestry through the missions Santa Clara, San Jose, and Dolores during the advent of the Hispanic European Empire into Alto, California, and who are the successors and living members of the sovereign, historic, previously federally recognized Verona Band of Alameda County. Furthermore, San Jose State University community recognizes that the university is established within the Thamian Ohlone speaking tribal ethnohistory territory, which is based on the unratified federal treaties of 1851 to 1852, which includes the unceded ancestral lands of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe of the San Francisco Bay Area. Some of the enrolled Muwekma lineages are descended from direct ancestors from the Thamian Ohlone tribal territory, whose ancestors had affiliation with Mission Santa Clara. The San Jose State University community also recognizes the importance of this land to the indigenous Muwekma Ohlone people of this region, consistent with our principles of community and diversity, strives to be good stewards on behalf of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe, whose land we occupy. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Today, we're going to have two keynote addresses, as well as a panel discussion. And so let's begin with introductions of our two keynote speakers. And then Lynette, do you or Donna want to go first? How are you, Lynette? Can we hear you? Okay. Cannot hear you. Yes. Alfredo, Lynette, again, maybe.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So we'll go with Donna first, but let's introduce both. So Lynette Dial has made history as the first library director of Native American descent in the history of Hope County, and has spent over 2 decades serving Hope County Public Library as program coordinator and staff supervisor, and now library director. Immersed in the art of storytelling since childhood, she uses her skill to engage, entertain, and educate audiences of all ages in library settings and outreach settings. And that's where I met the illustrious Lynette in her role then. As a leadership Hope member, her community affiliations include Rayford Hope Museum, Hope Native American Scholarship Association, Rayford Turkey Festival, and Rayford Hope Expo. Lynette is an English major with an emphasis in literary studies from the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. She currently serves as the tribal community liaison for the Reading Nation Waterfall Grant IMLS funded initiative and its 5 tribal partners. Donna Cossette is currently the registrar of the Churchill County Museum and Archives, but is also the former tribal chairwoman of the Phelan Pauay Shoshone tribe, and was one of a group of tribal leaders who went to Congress to ask for the creation of the Nui National Monument, spanning nearly 3 million acres of federal lands that are the ancestral home of the Paiute and Shoshone people. She currently is a member of the Oakland Museum Native American Council, Churchill County Cemetery Board. Dawn also enjoys being a consultant and advising on our Northern Paiute history and traditional lifeways. Her claim to fame is being a guest cook on the Travel Channel, Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmern. One of her lifelong passions is being one of her family's historians and sharing the life stories of her family. So welcome to both keynote speakers. And Donna, why don't we go first? Let's take about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we will also entertain questions. So Donna.
Well, thank you very much. So I thank you for the introduction. I have worked with the museums quite a bit. I also work for, have had the pleasure of working in the museum industry for a number of years. I do not have a formal education other than the hard knocks of the reservation and the Phelan Paiute Shoshone tribe. I have worked with I'm currently a member of the Oakland Museum of California Native American Advisory Council. We've worked on some exhibits that are currently on display, the native lands and lives before the other people came. And the California Museum in Sacramento, I've worked on some exhibits there, the California Indians First Peoples, and the Nevada State Museum, the Under One Sky exhibit, and the California Trail Interpretive Center in Elko, Nevada, speaking upon the Shoshone and Paiute perspective on the Pioneer Trail. I believe that within the museums and the libraries culture, that they kind of go hand in hand. We have collaborated with the Churchill County Museum in my community in our efforts to educate and promote the history of our local community by doing a couple of things. One of them was in 2006, we were able to create a video in which we collaborated with many different partners, being the Nevada or Churchill County Museum, the Churchill County Libraries, the University of Nevada, Reno, the Department of Transportation, the Bureau of Land Management, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife on a video that explores the Hidden Cave. And that is a cultural site, a very sensitive and very well-known cultural site within our community along Highway 50. And we were able to make that video using, at the time, some groundbreaking technology using LiDAR. And the Department of Transportation, I think across the United States, we're just getting into using that technology, and we're able to use it in our video. We also, and that was able to get and enable people to get into the hidden cave if they had physical disabilities, so that they can have a better understanding and have a better experience and learning about our cultural history there. And recently, and this was 2000, we're in 2022, so 2020, we embarked upon another endeavor with the Churchill County Library, in which they wrote a library museum grant, and it was to do a virtual reality of the Hidden Cave. So taking the technology one step further into having that virtual experience inside of the cave. Again, focus on people who could not physically get into the Hidden Cave, and having this experience both at the local libraries. And this collaboration also was working with the Phelan Paiute Shoshone tribal libraries. And we were able to get headsets for the virtual reality experience in 3 locations within our community. And these are just some of the things that we've been trying to promote within our community about our culture and our heritage, and having experiences within our cultural sites and showing the importance of them in using the libraries and museum settings. And it seemed to have been a very great partnership this project that we worked on has the potential for additional footage or experiences and continuing in that direction of virtual reality. And hopefully we can get it online someday. That's one thing that we're working for as well. Working with my experience working in our community, I also really like to work with the youth in having them have firsthand knowledge and a firsthand experience with my culture. I go into the museums and the libraries and the schools with regards to educating specifically, this time of year, Native American Heritage Month, in educating our youth and just giving them a little bit of hands-on experience with, what does it feel like to see a rabbit blanket? How heavy is it? How many, just giving them a full-on experience of engaging. And I know I'm a kind of person who experience and learn things by visually and by touch and experiencing them, and then it has a lifelong impression on me, and that's how I learn. So that's how I like to teach and show people how to experience our Native American culture. And I'm kind of saddened in our community because we do not have a thriving language program. It's kind of intermittent, and therefore we don't have a lot of experience with, truly learning our language here. And unfortunately, my tribe has one Toi Takata fluent speaker left, and he's very elderly. And to preserve the language would also be a great addition to our libraries, because that's where I often go to get and retain materials for our language, whether it's a dictionary. But within our Paiute culture, we have gotten a long ways from our original teachings, and Paiute is not our original name. Northern Paiutes were called, we have a different name. Toi Takata is we're cattail eaters. That's the band of Paiutes from our reservation. And but we don't have a lot of those dialects. Each one of our bands, whether it's the Toi Takata, the cattail eaters, the Coop Takata, the ground squirrel eaters in Lovelock Paiute tribe, Kuyui, which is a kuyui fish for the Pyramid Lake, Tubusi Takata, the Yarrington Paiute tribe, the Agai Takata, the trout eaters for Walker River. These are all tribes surrounding the Toi Takata band. And to the east of that, there's Shoshone bands from there. And so, to learn the dialect, we can kind of get a gist of learning our language, and understanding somewhat of our language. But it's really hard to have that curriculum having the set standards, because it's a little bit different for each one of our tribes. So we were told by elders, it doesn't matter which dialect you're speaking or how, if you have to speak Pailish, which is Paiute in English when speaking, but just try to speak. And don't be embarrassed, but just try every day to continue to educate yourself and continue to thrive to learn more. There is other programs that are thriving, in which we are wanting to be a part of. With the Fort McDermott tribe, they have a program where they're training the trainers in Paiute. And so that's something to look forward to, so that the language, because we feel the elders have always told us the language ties us to our culture and it ties us to the land, because in translation it loses something. It loses its senses. The word loses its senses. And when translated into English for some of our old origin stories, they almost sound perverse, or it just doesn't translate correctly. And, some of our original teachings too have very different different meaning and understanding with how we navigate through our life and our world that we live in. I do want to mention that, I did have a gal that I met at the Nevada State Library and Archives in Carson City. Her name was Shane Del Cohen. And she told me once that, if something's important enough, empower yourself and go do it. Very simple terms, but at the same time, it has a lot of personal challenges that go with it because to engage, I found, growing up here in rural Nevada, we are located 60 miles east of Reno, and we are in some of our communities are in a digital divide when libraries or transportation or just communication. Some people have spotted cell phone availability, like internet use. So getting into the digital age is something we're going to have to promote within our communities to be a part of that grid that's being established for our communities, because it's a very big reality when you go to some of these remote places that are 2 hours to the nearest hospital via helicopter. And so, trying to get some of this digital information via the libraries is kind of a challenge as well, to keep up to date with current trends or current books that are going to be presented. Oftentimes, there are not budgets available so that these books can be distributed or purchased for small libraries in our communities. And so we do have challenges, but again, empower ourselves to try to overcome or see how we can best get our communities brought into the century that we're in. And so I don't want to take up too much time. I have a lot of stuff I can talk about with regards to our culture and the libraries and museum settings. In working with, these other museums. As a young person, I always found it not my place to speak about things that we have elders who are alive to tell and share these stories with, because I was just a young person, and I feel I still am, even though I have gray hair. But anyways, I end up finding that we are losing our elders, as any community is. And with that, if they're not written down and if they're not have an oral, if they're not handed down in an oral tradition, then some of those stories, I'm not going to say lost, they're dormant. And so it's been a challenge to be a part and to listen to a number of my elders, and now be in the position to share the knowledge and the history that I know. And I'm more of an oral speaker rather than a literary, writing it down in a book or something of that nature. And to promote our culture and our history, because what I found, the first exhibit that I worked on was the Nevada State Museum, the Under One Sky exhibit. And the Department of Cultural Affairs, Mr. Urquiaga, came to our tribe and wanted to have an exhibit. And initially, this exhibit was going to go against our beliefs and our wants as a tribe. And it was supposed to feature the early man. And I don't know if you know too much about archaeological history in the Americas or in North America. But in our area, there was one of our relations. He was found to be over 12,000 years old, the oldest known mummified remains that had the oldest textiles in North America, that were buried with him in a dry cave here in our homelands. And it turned into a 20-year battle with the the federal government after NAGPRA became law. And we were one of the first tribes to apply for repatriation. And it took that long. And the Under One Sky exhibit was brought to our tribe by the Department of Cultural Affairs or the Nevada State Museum. And they wanted to partner with the Fallon Paiute tribe. And at that time, we felt it wasn't just the Fallon Paiute tribe's story to tell. It was all of our Northern Paiute, Western Shoshone, and Washoe people's story to tell about our occupation within the Great Basin. And so the partnership began, and this was building a bridge that has been broken since the creation of the Nevada State Museum. These are hard barriers to overcome, lessons to be learned. And in doing that, we were able to, I learned a lot because I didn't understand the dynamics within why the tribes were not given the true opportunity to participate in telling of our own story, our own history. And I, living it and going through that, we were able to, I got a higher understanding about my own culture and how it's being told in the state of Nevada, which was interesting. So we did have, if you're ever in Carson City, Nevada, and go to the Nevada State Museum, please take an opportunity to look at this exhibit because we were able to compromise. And that was one of the things that was constantly said, a compromise. And there was a separate area that either elders or tribal members or anybody can choose to go into. And in this room, it had the archaeology section, which that's where the mending the bridges happened and the compromises took place. Because when you're looking at the exhibit, there are two panels, one on the left, one on the right. One is the Native American perspective, the other is the scientific perspective. And that was a challenge because it was put in 2002 and it's still up. It was supposed to have been a 2-year exhibit and it's that popular and it's still in existence, but it does need to be updated because we were able to repatriate and bring home the Spirit Cave remains in 2017. And and the reason why I'm even still learning from our own people. I've had a conversation just fairly recently as to why our tribes did not want to do DNA testing, the mitochondrial DNA testing. And it wasn't because we were afraid of, finding out if we were from this area. It was, we were going against our original teachings. And I keep saying that our original teachings is we do not disturb, we do not have the permission. It's not our choice to rebury or at least do a destructive analysis on our dead. And it's irrelevant to us in our minds whether it's remains that have found inadvertently yesterday or remains that were buried 12,000 years ago. They're all of our relations, and we treat them the same way, with the same respect, the same dignity, because they're on the same journey that we're going to be taking when we pass over, and we have to answer to them. And this brings us into our ghost sickness, where others don't experience it other than ourselves. We do. That's our afterlife. And every time we speak of their names or have to want for them, it brings us into that realm of ghost sickness. And this is something that, the general population just doesn't experience. But we have our spiritual leaders and guiders to help us through that journey while we're here today in helping those who need it. And but that's just a part of my my life experience and how I come to learn and understand, the dynamics of the libraries, museum, and how our stories are being told. what I've seen from a child to now is in our museum and libraries is the stories being told, but it's kind of hard to hear. It's a hard story to say and to tell, and it's also hard to hear. But nonetheless, we as Native people were not able to progress in the United States as the rest of America was. We are wards of the United States government, and we were treated as such. And when when we learn, in these settings, it's very important. And we have to fight. We had to fight for every bit of acknowledgement that we have. The Native American Graves Repatriation Act, for instance, gave us the opportunity to bring our dead home. And so when we do have our voice and people hear it for the first time, it does sound angry. And it's because we've never had a platform or a voice to tell it, from our perspective. So it's growing pains, if you will, because, we are trying to catch up with a nation that has left us behind in so many respects. And it really does take time. And I do believe that there are a number of obstacles for our young people and for our tribal members in utilizing libraries and museums, because there are so many factors that they're having to be challenged with. In our rural communities, when something happens, it has a ripple effect. We have just recently in our school district, this is a public school district, there was a suicide that happened on campus by personnel at our local high school. These have ripple effects. We have 170,000 acres of public lands that is going to be withdrawn and given to the Department of Defense for the United States Navy. Our community also we share our community with the Top Gun training facility here in Fallon, Nevada. So the prospect of not being able to go to our cultural places and be Native, basically, is becoming harder and harder to understand. And we even tell our children that they can't go and, pick dog bane out in the middle of the desert, which we drive 200 miles round trip just to go get this plant and to make things with. And, those are challenges. There are many, many others. So the challenge to keep our kids, focused and engaged in participating in their literary needs, because if they don't have access to them, or if we fail them in not promoting it and telling them why, then we have failed them when we have ultimately failed ourselves. Cultural learning, there's I see more and more people gravitating towards the lessons that I teach, and I'm more of a traditional lifeways teacher, teaching basketry, hunting, making rabbit blankets, traditional rabbit nets, just many different traditional cultural lifeways, and how those are used and how we participate in them, and how we give thanks to not only the land but the things that we retrieve, and be connected to our land. And if these public lands are not going to be available, then I don't know how we're going to be Paiute anymore. So, but anyways, I don't want to take up too much time. I think I have 15 minutes, and we do want to get a little bit of questions. And so I would like to entertain that.
Thank you so much, Donna. And does anyone have any questions for Donna? Feel free to either use your mic. Actually, I don't think your mic's available. If you could use the chat, that would be great. And as we are waiting for questions, Donna, I want to just applaud you for you taking the time to share those stories with us, to share the situation that you and the tribe are facing, especially as a first generation son of immigrants. It's very important for you and others in the indigenous community to educate us on how best to respect the land and the history of our country, right? And we're all of different generations and different ways of knowing the United States, if you will. But at the same time, as a number mentioned in the chat, it's critical that you and other elders and those of the indigenous community educate us on how we can best respect what has come before us. So.
Oh, thank you. It does take a lot. We have lost a number of our elders and our spiritual leaders is what we call them. And to carry that forward into the future, it's going to be interesting, and it's kind of encouraging our elders currently who have never really put themselves out there to start educating on a public, platform. So, in trying to encourage them is our next challenge in getting them to come out and sharing their stories. And some of them are even just family traditions that have been shared in communities and families specifically, and just sharing that with our communities.
Thank you, Donna. There are a few quick questions. So the first one is the virtual reality tour from the Hidden Cave available online? Because I was looking, it looks like it may be available only by kiosk. Is that?
It is. These are kiosks that are in our community, and we're trying to work with the University of Nevada, Reno to make it an online thing. We had the challenge when creating the virtual reality because it was right during COVID, and it took a little longer to build. And then also the challenge was when you're putting the masks on and keeping them sanitary. So we had to amend our budgets to make them a sanitary place to go to use them.
Yeah.
But our conversations are right now is, can we have them available on our websites and make them available for in classroom experiences? So if you can't physically get to, because one of our biggest challenges in Nevada too is transportation via school bus, and this could be another way to help enhance the experience within the classroom through
Donna,
the libraries. Yeah.
Well, we are we're experienced with the virtual reality from a browser-based standpoint. So let's talk offline. Maybe we can help with that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
We'd love to do that. So a couple more quick questions. How can my public library actively better understand the Native American community? This is from Michael Bryan.
How to better understand your Native American community is to pick up the phone and make a phone call. I know a lot of communities have powwows, they have social gatherings, and these are for the public. Take the time to engage with them. They do like to share our history. When you do go into these gatherings, ask if it's respectful to, or if you can take photographs. It's always a proper protocol to ask to take someone's picture. Get to know the individuals themselves and start synergizing with them and asking them and inviting them to your community or to your library. They will oftentimes share with you what books are available, what kind of resources, and the people are resources that can be shared. Locally, we work with our libraries in having times when we have Native people go into the libraries and read books at story time. There are other presentations that our library engages in. This is our local library, the Churchill County Library. And But there's presentations and hands-on things that our libraries engage in. Working with the Churchill County Museum and the Churchill County Libraries, they just recently gave the library their historical books. So they work with our local museum in the museum's library. And so a lot of those historical books that people gravitate towards are relocated to our museum. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely very much, Donna. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to Lynette. But before we do, Donna and Alfredo, if you could help Donna, feel free to answer the questions in our Q&A queue. And basically you could type your answers to them. Lynette is giving her presentation. So.
I am Lynette Dial. I am with a member of the Lumbee tribe, and I feel like I'm sitting incorrectly to do this. I'm a member of the Lumbee tribe, and I have been working with Reading Nation Waterfall for the past 2 to 3 years with Dr. Chow, and it has been an adventure. And it has sent me on adventures, learning many, many things. I thought I knew quite a bit about my tribe, but through this, I have learned numerous things about my tribe, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be working with him and with this particular grant. So if we can move forward, honoring the historical and the current lives of Indigenous people, that kind of stuck with me. And I thought about historical people and current people that I feel have influenced Native culture in a positive way. So I did choose 2 individuals I chose. So Sitkalesha is Redbird. Her missionary name was Gertrude Simmons Bonham. She was of the Yankton Sioux descent, and she became a writer, an editor, translator, musician, educator, and political activist. In several of her written works, Sitkalesha chronicled her struggles with cultural identity and the pull between the dominant culture in which she was educated and the Dakota culture into which she was born and raised. Her later books were among the first works to bring traditional Native American stories to a widespread white English-speaking readership, and she was co-founder of the National Council of American Indians in 1926, which was established to lobby for Native American rights to the United States for citizenship and other civil rights that the Native American had long been denied. Now, that is a historical view of an individual whose life was really important in establishing just a view of the Native American, because in many years before, all the history before, after the contact with Europeans, they were basically invisible. They really were. And so Sitkalesha, even though she suffered in numerous ways by being torn from her family, educated in a completely foreign way of life, she excelled in that way of life because she was a fine, brilliant woman with a great mind. But it created so much controversy for her when she visited home that she began to write about the effects of being taken away and put in a school, even for the point of education. And of course, we all know that there was much more to that. It was an effort to reestablish the Indian as a white person with a white frame of mind and a set of thoughts that went in that direction. They were trying to kill the Indianness that lived inside the Native people, and it took someone that experienced both aspects of that living to be able to reveal that to the world and to write about it in a way that was so passionate, as Sit Kalisha did. Can we go forth? Thank you. Another individual that is very current is Arlinda Locklear. She was born in 1951 into the Lumbee tribe. Her mother and father are Lumbee. She was raised in the Fort Bragg area. She had been moved to Charleston as a young girl, and her father was military. She went to school initially in Charleston, but she graduated with a Juris Doctorate from the School of Law at Duke University in 1976 and began working as a staff attorney in the branch of the Native American Rights Fund. And in 1982, she became the directing attorney of the Native American Rights Fund in Washington. Arlinda became the first Native American woman to successfully argue a case before the United States Supreme Court and has since won legal victories for other indigenous nations, including the Sioux, the Oneida, the Yavapai, and the Apache nations. Arlinda Locklear is noted as an expert in Native American law and tribal recognition litigation. She represented the Lumbee tribe in its quest for writ of federal recognition from 1987 until 2010. So she is my current individual that I would highlight, and I would say that much like Sit Kalisha, the experience that she has had fighting for the legal rights of Native American tribes, it has had a great influence, has had much influence on the Native American community across the country. Many different tribes that she has worked with, been an advisor to, individuals that she has been an example before, and they have come behind her in pursuit of a legal degree, and they also work with different nations, different Native nations across the country. She is quite formidable. It must take something quite spectacular to win a court case in front of the Supreme Court. I admire her for that, her dedication. And both these women have had such an influence on Native American and indigenous cultures, not only by virtue of the fact that they are born into these cultures, but by virtue of the fact that they have taken their personal experiences and used them to propel those cultures into the limelight, so that the American establishment cannot just continue to dismiss and make them invisible in our country today. Can we propel? Thank you. Now, I looked at all the questions that we had, and one of the questions that we had, the one in the very beginning, and I think I just did something to kill my screen. What did I do? Alejandra, I need your help.
Well, I still see we're on
There.
six slide
There,
5 of
that's
6.
it. That's it.
Okay.
I am so sorry. So being Native American in the U.S. today means that despite the fact that we are the first cultures that were encountered in this nation, on this land, indigenous cultures, First Nations people still realize that they continue to occupy the cultural status of a third place nation. we are still third in the cultural race. We are still invisible to many degrees. One thing I do want to say is, in referring back to Dr. Chow's acknowledgement of the people of the land, that is a new current form of thinking it is respectful, and I am very appreciative of it, but it is still basically a verbal acknowledgement, and there are still so many practical applications of recognition that still go undone. So that is one of the things that stick out to me today. Being Native in this country, I love this country. I'm very grateful to be a part of it, but it is without a doubt the truth that we still are being ignored. We still are being pushed to the side, even though lip service is being given to the fact that we are being acknowledged in many ways. We still have to fight very hard to receive any type of recognition. The best support members of Native American community, the best way to support members of the Native American community is going back to the statement I just made. Instead of offering verbal acknowledgement of the discrepancies you see in the Native lives around you, offer some action to go with creating a solution for those discrepancies. Buy a book, place a book in a location where Native children can reach that book, read that book, have that book, let that book affect their lives, make those books available. Create programs that will actually address the needs of Indigenous adults, like maybe literacy classes, GED classes, legal aid classes, job skills, workshops, and classes. Those things could actually help them and change their lives. Have you experienced racial prejudice? That was an interesting question to me. I have experienced a racial prejudice, and there's one in my mind that probably will always stay with me. And that particular instance occurred when I was in my high school years here in Hope County. I was in elevated classes, and there were 4 Native Americans in those classes. There were 2 male and there were 2 female. And when we graduated, there were 3 scholarships that were generally given in Hope County, from the Civic League, from the Kiwanis League, and from the Community Development League. And as I look back at it, even now in my mind, to be logical and to be fair, if you had students of different races with comparable grades and they were all eligible for scholarships, if one particular group always gave theirs to African Americans because they were an African American based group, okay, that's fine. And then there was one white student that always got a scholarship from another group that was basically part of the white community. Would it not have been fair for the other scholarship to have been given to a Native American of comparable intelligence, of excelling grades, to give that individual an opportunity just as well so as the other races? That was so unfair. And as long as I live, I will still get emotional about the fact that that was very unfair. The only Native Americans that got scholarships were the Native American athletes. And of course, they were male. They were male. They still had the comparable grades. They could do the work. And so they got the opportunity because they had the athletic skill added to that. And that is generally, for many, many years, the way those scholarships ran until those of us who had been made to feel inadequate grew up and took the opportunity to do something about it. I think in my bio, it shows that I am a charter member of the Hope Native American Scholarship Association. And that is the association that those individuals, those Native American individuals growing up in Hope County that were so invisible and so dismissed from those scholarships grew up and started that association. And to date, we have given, I think, 45 scholarships to Native American students since we began in 2007. And it is a great, great work to be done. And it's a great opportunity to do that work because it has a passionate background behind it. So being discriminated against can be devastating, but it can also be powerful. It can push those experiencing the racism to levels of action that may otherwise not occur. Best ways to celebrate the Native American community during Native American Heritage Month. We have taken into account, and I am, as Dr. Chow said, the first Native American to hold the position of director at Hope County Public Library. But for many years, I've had the opportunity to work as staff supervisor and program coordinator. So one of the things that we have done, and it has often been a success, is to take elements of the Native culture and during the separate weeks of November, focus on at least two aspects. One thing being use the book club to read a very, very relevant novel that will allow people to experience something real about what's going on in the Native American community. And the fact that Oakland was brought up, I was very glad to hear that because last year we did the Native American novel, Miss Donna, They're There by Tommy Orange. And when we began reading the novel, initially, some of the reactions were, oh my God, this is so violent. But by the end of that novel, it had impacted and connected so with the people that were reading that novel that they understood where the violence came from. They understood the different elements and problems that were impacting the Native community in Oakland. And they understood and saw the value of the relationships of the different individuals and how oftentimes those relationships being broken up by people being moved from their tribal lands and from the support of their elders and being able to access the information that they need from the elders. Miss Donna, I admire you so much, because what you are trying to preserve is exactly what our young people need. They need as much contact and knowledge with the elders and from the elders about the life ways and how they go about dealing with the difficulty of what we encounter outside the tribal area. Sometimes the most traditional ways are the best ways to deal with even the most current problems. So one of the things that we did, read a novel by a Native American author, find out what is going on in that author's mind and among those people that you can gain some understanding from. I think that's one great way. Another thing that we did was we offered programming classes where they were teaching culture classes like native dance, regalia development, basket weaving. And at the end of the entire month, we did a mini powwow, and we brought all of these things together. And one of the things that makes this so great is bringing that Native American community into your library to teach as instructors and showing that you value their knowledge, just like you, Miss Donna, all the things that you're teaching and revealing. That's important information that a lot of times, unless individuals go about truly pursuing how to learn, how to acquire knowledge about Native tribes, about the cultures, they're not going to get that information. They're just going to glance over it and keep going. And there's so much they're going to miss. Can we advance the screen? Can you advance my screen,
Yes,
Alejandro?
yeah,
Thank
I'll
you.
take care of it. I'll take care of it.
Thank you.
Lynette,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interject, but actually we would like to discuss some of those questions via panel as well. So
Should I leave them alone? I certainly can do that.
If that's okay with you, you certainly
can certainly do that. Yes.
Yes, I mean, I really appreciate how thorough you've been and all of your leadership and passion and that you have brought to so many people. So.
Okay. So you can take that down for me, if you would, Alejandro. Now, what else should we discuss?
Lynette, if you have any concluding thoughts, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt your flow.
That's quite all right. If there are questions that anyone would like to ask, please, this is the appropriate time.
Thank you, Lynette. Are there any questions from there? Certainly, one of the questions was the title of the book you had mentioned.
They're There by Tommy Orange.
They're There by Tommy Orange.
Focused in Oakland, Miss Donna. It is focused in Oakland.
Great. So please ask any questions in Q&A. Feel free to also add it in the chat. But what we're going to do is Michael Bryant has asked 3 really great questions. And he had asked specifically to Donna, but I'm going to actually start our panel discussion with his questions. But before we do, I want to introduce the other members of our distinguished panel. Kim Sellers, Associate Professor and also Reading Director at UNC Pembroke, and Melissa Stoner, the Native American Studies Librarian at UC Berkeley. Welcome. Thank you so much for your time. So let's start off with Michael's questions. And he asked, how can BCL, and we want to insert any library, actively better understand the Native American Indigenous community? And so obviously within his perspective as a librarian, clearly, what can libraries do to better understand the Native American Indigenous community? So I'm going to open it up to the panel, and I think let's start with maybe Kim or Melissa, and then we will go back to Donna and Lynette. So.
I'll start. I think Donna and Lynette have both kind of really addressed that very thoroughly by talking about opportunities that members, non-Indigenous members of the community can reach out and interact with the Indigenous community. There are so many community events that you can be a part of. I would think the biggest part too is understanding the perspective and valuing the perspective of the community. And to me, as librarians, you have access to so many books by Indigenous authors that give you the perspective. I tell my teachers all the time, you may never know what it's like to be American Indian or African American or Asian American, but through the lens of authors, you can kind of step into their shoes for a short period of time. And to me, that's the best way of perspective taking to help someone understand and realize, okay, we have a lot in common. You're just like me. We have the same feelings. And to me, that's the basis to start from. You never want to interact with anyone thinking, okay, I'm interacting with these aliens from another culture. They're not like me. Yes, they're more like you than you think. So I'll be quiet now and I'll let the expert Melissa speak.
Thank you, Kim.
I don't know about the expert part, but hello everybody. She'eya Melissa Stoner Yanashia. Hawathan Nishlan do Tachini Bashishi. Tina Azani Nishla. I'm say hello everybody. My name is Melissa Stoner. I am from the Diné Nation, and that's also known as the Navajo Nation. And I think I feel like Michael's question in terms of understanding the Native American community is like really a question that like so many, I'm pretty sure a lot of public libraries have in terms of I'm actually, the perspective I'm giving right now is more of like an academic library perspective. However, my partner is a public librarian. So, you know, we do talk about these things in terms of access and in terms of really just understanding the history of the original stewards of the lands in which you like live and work. And I think there are a number of like websites out there where you can go and actually research those histories, as well as just even reaching out to local academic institutions and seeing who they partner with and if they've done a land acknowledgement. But that's just kind of, you know, if we're like looking for links, I'll definitely like throw some in the chat. I'll share them with Dr. Chow, but that's just kind of like a really basic way to get started.
Thank you, Melissa. Donna?
One of the ways how I became a panelist here was because Alejandro was singing at the Nevada State Museum in Carson City. And so, you know, giving the platform and bringing in a Native American voice, even with general subjects or topics within your museum, that would be very helpful. When that question was asked, I was kind of thinking of, and I should have mentioned it, that there's a woman the first Native American woman in the United States who wrote a book, and this is Sarah Winnemucca, and it's called The Life Among the Paiutes. And it was written in 1883 and published with Elizabeth Peabody in Boston. And she had her own school that she had as well. And she was one of my relations, and she taught my family here in the Big Meadows, the Lovelock area, how to read, write, and learn both the traditional way of life and it was a traditional way of life and how we fit in it. And it was basically through assimilation, or not assimilation, but through learning the English or the Western way in a traditional manner. And this book is still in publication, and it was written again in 1883. And Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins, she went and performed as a performer in order to get her plight across to the people who needed to hear it. And so, you know, the struggles that we have, and she wrote in her book that she wishes she could take all of her Paiute people take them around Cape Horn to Ellis Island so that they can walk through those doors as an American citizen so that we have the same rights as Americans in our own land. And so, giving a platform to Native American communities, not just with the Native American, just so that we have a voice. And you can do that in a way of through partnerships, through libraries, museums, the arts, because again, we are very visual and very artistic people, as with any culture. And all of this will give you or the libraries an opportunity to engage. You are going to tap into a community that you have not seen before. You invite community members that share their works. And you can, there's more and more authors that we have. When I was looking into authors in our community, I was very surprised as to these secret authors that we have, within Lovelock and Fallon and Reno. And, I was really surprised, and I was actually quite proud because we had so many authors, and their books they range in various different subjects, whether it's historical accounts, whether it's, the atrocities that are happening within our communities with, abuse. And so, or even just, I think there was one who liked to write science fiction books, and they kind of combined, and I can't remember his name, but, just when you start tapping into this, it really kind of gets your creative juices going as a person in the position to engage with the communities, the Native American communities. And so how can you engage with them is inviting them. And it doesn't only have to be during November. It doesn't only have to be during Native American Heritage Month. If there's a subject and if you feel it might be within our communities, talk to tribal leaders, get to know the people and the who's who within those communities. The museums have been doing them. The art world have been doing them. Partner with those institutions to where you can gather and gain more information about the communities that you serve. And I know another one is through our public education system. I've worked with our school district in regards to our Native American children and how they could best serve our children. And here in Nevada, I'm not sure about other states, but the government gets funding for, I think it's through a Title VI program, and the government gets funding for children living on federal lands. And through that, there is within our school districts a Native American liaison with the children in the schools and the tribes and the community. So that is another resource that you can tap into, because those individuals who are the liaisons, one of their biggest assets is to have the knowledge of the people in their community that they too can draw upon and help them in understanding the culture, every aspect of educating our children. And it combines with, our adults in the community. So I hope I gave you a little bit of advice or at least helpful information in regards to how we can best communicate with our communities. And also, I wanted to mention when it comes to public land acknowledgement, I believe those are government to government relations, or at least within our tribal communities. We just want to be included in them as general public. But don't hesitate to ask the question, whose land are we on? Start getting that question out there. And once you start asking, people are going to say, wow, I really don't know, or hey, it's this. So, ask the question and just give a brief acknowledgments, just in any forum. It doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be official. But just give that acknowledgement on the land that you're on. And again, the Oakland Museum is also on Ohlone land. So, it's really hard. And I know in these urban settings, you're going to have a plethora of a melting pot of native communities. Oakland is one of them, and I was really glad to see the diversity in the information sharing, the history, the art, the talent, the knowledge that's there. Just because they live in urban environments does not mean that they possess any less of knowledge that our Indian communities or our Native communities share and would like to share. So I hope I helped.
Very nice, Donna. Thank you so much. Lynette, any final thoughts on this?
I just want to refer to what Donna just said. She is absolutely correct. Does not matter where you go, from what tribe you emerge and where you travel to, whether it is an urban space. One of the Lumbee swamps that we have, doesn't matter. Your Indianness is still there in you. And I would like to applaud Miss Donna for continuously teaching it and supporting it and preserving it. It is wonderful to know that somebody is there with some passion to try to save every aspect of it that they can, because it's really important. How do you replace it when it's lost? It's just impossible to replace. But in reference to libraries and how they can serve Native American communities and Indigenous people, I think the first thing I would say is just meet them where they live. If you don't know where they are, I recommend you do exactly like Miss Donna says, go out and find them. And I think Miss Kim said the same thing. Go out and find them. Find the people who know them. Meet them. You can't meet their needs if you don't know their needs. And sometimes you will not know those needs unless you go find out what they are. Sometimes they won't come in. They have to be invited in, and they have to be made to feel welcome. That's one of the wonderful things about programming. If you do programming from a Native American standpoint, focused on Indigenous people, and you have the Indigenous people to come in and work as your instructors, they feel valuable because they're sharing knowledge that they've been asked to impart. That means to them that someone else placed value on what they know. That's an important thing to them. You bring them in and you have them teach what they know, and then you share. Another thing that is very important, I think, also is to buy the books that meet their needs. One of the interesting things after being here for 22 years that I have learned is a lot of the times when people come to the library, they're looking for a book to answer the question they have. And I lie to you not when I say that one day a gentleman brought a snake on a stick and said, I just moved here and I killed the snake. I want to know is it poisonous? So we had to quickly find a book on snakes for him. So people a lot of times come into the library are looking for materials that are answering the questions they have. Order books and materials to answer their questions. And again, I say, you may not know what the questions are until you go out and find them and ask the questions. But that is an important way to serve them. And I did particularly order a great many books for Indigenous Day and Native American Heritage Month, but this was the first opportunity I ever had to have control over doing that. So I did it.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
But I hope to be able in the future, to really offer more, much more programming, materials, workshops that are meeting specific needs there, or providing them a conference room to open up a workshop to the Native community, from within the Native community, something, a meeting space they need. It's amazing the simple things that they need, that they think is too much to ask. So that's one important reason for meeting and knowing your Native community.
Wonderful, Annette. Thank you so much to the entire panel. So the next question, also by Michael, is how can my public library create event spaces and procedures where the Native American community can share their feelings with others? Melissa, do you want to go first?
I really think that is actually just essentially holding space for communities together, creating a space where they would feel comfortable, because I think there's one thing to invite people to a space to talk about how they feel when they've never been there, as opposed to them coming to the space and feeling welcome and also feeling that freedom to be able to express how they feel about it. So I think this really starts with creating that space for that community before just even wanting to sit them down and talk to them about what they want to see different or what they want to see changed.
Thank you, Melissa.
And I want to piggyback on that and say, whenever you look at the space that you have in your library, I want you to think, is this welcoming to the community that I want to bring in? Because people of color know where they belong and they know where people want them. And they can go into a space and they can quickly get an assessment of, this is not for me. I'm not welcome. They don't want me here. And I get people saying all the time, well, why don't you guys do this and why don't you guys do that? Self-preservation and protection of ourselves is something that we're always taught when we were younger, to protect ourselves from racist encounters, from situations that can harm us. So we're aware of environments that are not welcoming, where if we get those certain looks that we don't belong. And like Lynette has said, if those books that represent us aren't there, and the fact that Lynette is there, another brown face that looks like me, that says I belong here, that speaks volumes. So if you can't have a diverse staff, if there's a way to make the representation of the culture and the people present there, if it's an environment where they see themselves, that is a big part of creating that welcoming environment that Melissa's talking about.
Wonderful, Kim. Lynette?
I did want to say, everybody first has the idea of resource sharing as being the concept of, you have some books over here that I need. Can I borrow those books? And maybe I can shoot you some of the movies I have. That's what they initially think resource sharing is. And that's initially what it has been. But there's such a thing as being the liaison to share relationship. I know this is going to sound a little bit off. Resource sharing for relationships is what I'm trying to say. Being the liaison, the bridge, the middle person that creates that. If you're doing forums, creating a space, like Melissa said, creating a space for them to meet, to talk about, and have a discussion going on about the issues that concern them. Then they have to be talking to somebody. Who are they talking to? Are they talking to the people of local government? Are they talking to CEOs or associational presidents that they need to communicate with? And how easy do you think that is to do? That is sometimes so hard and so impossible. But if you can be there to be the bridge and be the interpreter, not necessarily because the word for blue here is azul and blue over here, not because the words are necessarily different, but because there is a difference in the way people understand and interpret feelings, emotions, behaviors, and you really need someone there to be that bridge, to make that connection. If you have, for example, a tribal area that has their water source being damaged by a local industry. And you have to have a discussion going on between those tribal members and the CEO of that company and the local government that has made way for that company to be there. You're going to have somebody in there that can relay the concerns, because sometimes they're not going to feel comfortable talking, but they will tell the individual that is there, that has been their contact. They will tell that individual the problems. And if that person is there mediating, sometimes the discussion will pick up and take off on its own. So I think that is another important thing we can provide, is a mediator between Native communities and more formal elements in the community that they need to contact or have discussion with.
Thanks on that. Donna?
In including or having people in your public space, I would say if you have Native Americans who are on staff, rely upon them, because we're constantly, when we leave our homes, we're ambassadors of our people. And so use them as a contact for the communities within your facility. Another one would be board members. If you want to have meaningful relationships with the communities, then include and make efforts to include a Native American spot on those boards, so you do have at least some indication as to what the needs are, how that could be the person or the contact to, or even the gateway to the Native American communities. And again, if you don't have those, I know working with small libraries and museums in rural Nevada, space is somewhat of an issue too. So partnership in sharing space and sharing and hosting your events in another location, there's nothing wrong with that. And so, space sharing would be another thing that you can help promote getting, or at least engaging with the Native American communities.
Thank you, Donna. And I just wanted to also add, this is also an example, Michael and others, of how to support the Native American Indigenous community, provide resources and support, add to your workflow, allocate resources to bring the voices of the Native American Indigenous community to the table. And that is part of our commitment as a School of Information, is to host these kind of events so that members of Native American Indigenous communities can speak for themselves and share with us how we can best help. So I think that idea actually came from Hispanic Heritage Month Symposium, where we talked about the fact that overall numbers are maybe less, but the bottom line is if it was easy, it would already be done, right? And we must put the work forward and allocate the resources necessary to make these things happen. So thanks again for the entire panel. Let's jump into a few other questions. So the first one, finish the sentence for me. Being Native American in the United States today means what? If you'd like to finish that sentence. Being Native American in the United States today means. Lynette, you look like you're hankering to answer that question.
Well, I'll go back to what I said before. It is nice to be acknowledged overtly by the surrounding communities, but we still, even though we're First Nation people with First Nation culture, we're still running third in the actual appreciation of acknowledgement of visibility status of the culture, still running a par third. That's what I feel is relevant to being Native in the U.S. today.
Thank you, Lynette. Donna?
So being Native American in the United States today means to me, I find it continually hard in educating general public in keeping us out of the past. We are not people of the past. We are here. They're a vibrant community, and we have something to say. And you know, it's getting harder and harder in my particular area to be a member, to be in the to be a member of the United States. I'm still a ward of the United States government. And I feel it when our voice, when we're talking about government to government relations, is not truly being heard, and they're continually being ignored. Politics is more, politics is more than the safety and welfare of the people. And I see that more and more, not just with Native American communities. I see that the general population are being more and more treated like Native Americans. And when you think about it, some of the same complaints or the issues that are being faced, we have been dealing with those since contact. And, some of these efforts that are being faced or being put forward through land acknowledgements or other means, but they really need to be words of truth and not just words of convenience, because we listen when our government tells us things, and their actions that support it or inactions that don't support it. And so we are Indigenous people, and me as an individual, I feel conflicted.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah, Melissa?
I think I was really thinking about what Lynette has said and what Donna said. And I think really for me, like the first kind of thing that comes to mind is, yes, like we're still here. I understand where Donna, when Donna says she feels conflicted, because I feel like being Native American in the US today is almost a burden as well. A burden in the sense that here we are still having to carry that emotional burden of having to educate settlers as to what land back is, as to what communities are, as to what it is to be Indigenous. And I think that is kind of something that has, that was like one of the things that like kind of resonated when I read the question. But it does feel like, yes, we're here. There's a responsibility, like as an Indigenous person, when Donna said that she is like a sort of ambassador for her tribe, that's what it is. As when we take a step back, we are like those representatives of those people, because to find an Indigenous librarian, professional, even somebody getting an Indigenous person, Native American person getting their PhD, those people are unicorns. So I just think that this is, raising awareness and just really understanding the impact that being Native today carries.
Thank you, Melissa. Kim?
Honestly, I agree, and I co-sign with everything that everyone has said. And to kind of give you a perfect example of how difficult it is and how weird it is that to be American Indian in the United States, we have a huge legislative act that the Supreme Court could possibly take away the ICWA Act. And if anyone has never heard of that, that's basically the Indian Child Welfare Act. And that basically takes, that came from the onus of all of the times that people were trying to basically kill the Indian out of the children and taking the Indian kids out of their homes. And it basically impacts and ripples through the entire Pan-American Indian community. And right now, the fact that this has never been codified in law, but just like with abortion, this is something that this kind of tribe to tribe relationship and having control over the bodies of our own Indian children is being impacted by a colonial government that we never had a hand in shaping. And right now, we don't even have representatives on the Supreme Court. And just this year, the African-American community had a representation of an African-American woman from that community. Although they've had African-American community representation all along, there's not one effort to put an American Indian soul to kind of shape the laws that are going to impact us. And that in itself should give you a glimpse into what it's like to be an American Indian, where everyone is making decisions about your life and you don't have a voice.
Right.
And I'll give you another example. It may be a trivial example, but it really impacted, I know, our community, because it was sort of like, really? In social media, I guess we had an ABC affiliate who she had an opportunity to amplify the American Indian voice. And she was talking about American Indian creators that are in television and in movies. And this woman messed up the segment by saying Indian creatures instead of Indian creators. Do you know how upsetting this was for the entire American Indian community? And the fact was, she didn't apologize. There was no apology from ABC to the American Indian community. It was a laugh and people went on. But that's disturbing. She had an opportunity to amplify and to basically enlighten and say, look, what are the great things that our young people are doing now in media? We're creating our own movies, our own television shows. And it's like getting the best meal that you ever had, and someone threw it on a garbage pan, a garbage pail, and said, hey, there's your great meal. Enjoy it from there. Who's going to eat out of a trash can and say that's great? So sorry for being the angry brown woman right now, but that does kind of agitate me that, in this society, and people are talking about, oh, y'all are always concerned about race and ethnicity, and it doesn't matter. It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Thank you, Kim. And this is a safe space to share those types of thoughts and feelings. And that's exactly what we want to understand and hear from you. So thank you so much for sharing that. We do have a question in the text or the chat. If you were an Indigenous person, how do you get involved with your tribe? How do you find them? This is from Karina Gonzalez.
If you are an Indigenous person.
How do you get involved with your tribe? How do you find them? Yes, Donna.
So you have to kind of be very civic minded if you want to get involved with your tribe. And I'm very involved with my tribe. I worked for my tribe for 15 years. I served as the vice chairman, and I was elected as the first Native American woman as the chairman when I left. And I currently serve on 2 committees, which that's the only, we're only allowed to serve on two committees. I serve on our cultural committee and our enrollment committee. And I go to every council meeting. And if there's issues that I feel that I need to speak about, I speak about them. They have a honorary seat for me in the audience. And they listen, and there's mutual respect, because I'm a very opinionated person, and I respect the position of our council and their title. And they're the leaders of our tribe. So when I'm in that room, I mind my P's and Q's, but also how I serve my community is that if there is no avenue, or at least a place for me to share my knowledge, I find the space. I'm going out this weekend showing people how to and where to pick safe willows for willow making. And the weeks after that, I'm going to show them how to make a cradle board. And these are on my own time and my own dime. So if, like I said, if it's important enough, empower yourself and just do it. That's how you or make a difference in your community, and you keep being involved in your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Okay, well, thank you again for all of your heartfelt responses. The next question is, in what ways can libraries, and we've addressed this in some ways, but more directly, in what ways can libraries better support and help break previous stereotypes and the lack of knowledge and understanding of Native American, Indigenous values, history, culture, and heritage? How can libraries best help support the cause?
I think that one of the things that libraries can do to break stereotypes is to be intentional about presenting I'm going to say all three groups, because in my area, I am used to dealing with white culture, Native American, African American. We have since come to have a large contingent of Latin American individuals here. But traditionally, it has been the three races. But I think what I'm trying to say is, when you present, be intentional about presenting each group equally, and maybe highlighting the good things in each group, the bad things in each group, comparing them and making it understood that there's not one group worse than the other. There can be cultural things that are just simply different. I do know there's alcoholism in each group, in every group I have run across in the world. Personally, I know there's alcoholism. So if you're going to present, if you're going to focus on that, why just attribute it to the Native American group when you know it exists all around you? And I think maybe I'm just going to refer back to what I said about the scholarship when I was a student in high school. If you're going to, offer something, shouldn't it be equally offered to every group? As long as there are individuals there who qualify and who meet the requirements, shouldn't it be fairly offered across the board to all groups? Well, the same thing applies to the difficult and the harder aspects of culture in society. They exist in every group. I mean, but often, of course, everyone here knows that when it comes to specifically being Native American, that many things get attributed to them. They tend to be alcoholics. They tend to be thieves. And one of the things that we make a huge joke about, and I'm certain that Kim knows it, is if you go in, I've heard numerous people say, if you go anywhere around Pembroke and Robeson County, the people there, the Lumbees there, they'll cut you. It's a big joke. But there are different elements attributed to different different cultures, and they are across the board. There's good and bad everywhere, but you have to really find a way to even the playing field so that everybody starts out from the same point and can be appreciated for their accomplishments, the different elements of the culture that are so valuable, starting from the same playing field, the same leveling point.
Thank you on that. Yes, Don.
So to try and stop the stereotypes within our libraries, one thing I know, when I visited the Nevada State Library, I went there one time to go and look up the constitutions of the other reservations because I felt that they should have at least an inclusive collection of current information that would support our Indian communities. And sadly, they were not. Sadly, they didn't even have all of the tribes in there. So if you maintain or if you have, these special type collections, or if you have the particular information, be inclusive to all of the communities, because that's invaluable to us, because we don't readily have that available. And one of the places within our government is libraries. And if our library systems doesn't have these certain types of, or just basic information about our governments, how are our children going to ever know? How are they ever going to learn? Stereotypes too is I don't know how to address this. The tribes have government to government relations with the United States government. We are not equal to, or I guess we're equal to, the state and counties and cities. We do not have to answer to, at least in the state of Nevada, because we are not a PL 280 tribe, which most California tribes are. We are government to government relations with the United States government, and we have our own self-governance on our reservations. But, having that dynamic of what does everything that I just said mean? What is a PL 280 tribe? What is a treaty tribe? What is the difference of those? Maintaining that kind of information and understanding, the relationships of the tribes that you're serving or the people that you're serving. And if you're in like a urban environment, it might have to be even more so, just to explain what that dynamic is, tribal government, and get more information about, the authors who are really good in that means. Present equally, because just because there's an issue in regards to an environmental issue, it's not just local, state, or federal government who has a platform, or who would like to have a platform. It's also the tribes too, because you have to understand that we have our own government, and everything that affects everybody else affects us as well, whether it's the food, whether it's rent, whether it's homelessness, whether it's, any of these plethora of issues that every American is relating to. So it's affecting us as well. So being mindful that, hey, this isn't just there's a Native American community. We're not just a culture. We are also a government. So kind of wrapping your head around that this is an actual government, and we should probably include them in some of these issues if you have them. I don't know if you get if you have public speakers within your libraries talking about issues that are hot topics, or at least their representatives. So I would say, that would be at the beginning of at least in the government realm, of trying to stop those stereotypes when it comes to those issues. And yeah, it's gonna be hard. Trying to educate people is hard. I was trying to educate somebody just recently, and I got, it's pretty interesting, with their tongue lashing. So it's,
it takes a lot. It does. It takes a lot. And some days we just don't want to educate. Some days we're just done.
Throw your hands up and say, I'm done.
Yeah. And I feel like this is where we need those white allies. This is where we need white allies to step in and pick up the slack, I guess. Not necessarily slack, but just kind of help with that labor, the emotional labor of having to educate, especially when it comes to discussing traumas and discussing Indigenous histories, which is not really the best thing, the best thing to talk about. It is very, it is traumatizing to some people.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Donna. Kim?
I appreciate everything that they have shared. I'll give you a perfect example of one way to deal with the stereotype and how frustrating and damaging it is. This entire month of November, I don't know how many colleagues that I have who tell me they are wiped by the end of November because people have called them. Can you come speak? Can you come speak at my school? Can you come talk about this? And it's sort of like, I've got to explain how to be an American Indian. I've got to tell all of these people what you should and should not do and how, and then in the midst of this, I'll hear some of my friends saying, I can't believe I came to a classroom today and they had kids dressed in the Indian headdresses, the construction paper headdresses, pretending to be Indians. And they were talking about the Thanksgiving myth. And we just celebrated Thanksgiving here in the United States. And I tell my teachers all the time, this is a myth that is interwoven in the fabric of education. And the problem with stereotypes is that they're learned. Racism is learned, which means if it's learned, it can be unlearned. But the problem is it's hard and it's difficult, and there has to be a want to. I tell my teachers all the time, kids can be passive and resist everything you try and do. And I said, it's not just kids, but grown adults can too. I don't know how many times I've heard people say, well, y'all are just woke. I don't want to hear that. I was brought up into this world and it was like this. And I'm like, no. It doesn't have to be where you're constantly othering and offending a population of people. You can stop this. You have agency. You can disrupt all of these narratives through change. And I'm so thankful that you guys, all the questions, all the responses, you're like, what can I do? What can I do? Interrupt. Tell the true story of Thanksgiving. Talk about the issues with contact with colonists, how that disrupted American Indian life. Some of my colleagues here on this panel, they don't understand what it's like to be Lumbee, to have people question you all the time. Oh, you're Lumbee, huh? What happened to your language? The colonists impacted our culture and language so much. The only thing that we have left is our people and the traditions that actually had to be adapted because of the onslaught of dealing with the diseases, the taking of our land, and selling us as slaves, as indigenous people. And then they'll look at us and say, well, where's your language? I'm like, we survived. That's enough. Culture changes. Those markers of culture, it doesn't matter. These ladies were talking about trying to protect and preserve their language. If a language dies, that people still live, but they're trying to keep it alive. We had to change our language so we could survive, so we could interact with others that would help us survive.
Right.
So the fact that we talk about the Thanksgiving part is that we're here with family and community and we still belong. I never heard any of these individuals on the panel talking about, I don't know who I am, and I don't know who I am as an individual. We all are aware of who and what we are and our place in this world, but we're resisting all the time individuals who are telling me, well, that's not what I expected American Indians to be. Y'all aren't behaving like I want you to be. I have an idea, I have a stereotype, I have a projection in my mind of what you should be. And that's because of these stereotypes. And television created a lot of this stuff.
Yes.
The mascots that are there in sports did not help any of this at all. And the fact that I hear still people to this day talking about, well, I can't believe y'all got rid of the Redskins and the Cleveland Indians. Can you imagine if there was a celebration of the Seattle Whites, how upset our white American community would be? But the problem is we need a hand in this. We need people like you who care and step up and say, hey, maybe during American Indian Heritage Month, we spotlight those stories. And if we invite speakers in, that we listen to them and we have speakers and we don't put the intellectual burden all the time of these people coming in, oh, it's American Indian Heritage Month, we'll just get somebody to speak about that. No, change your curriculum. Make sure the books that you have reflect the culture. Don't do an add-on. Make sure that you're doing an effort to do the work. And I tell my teachers all the time, don't rely on somebody else's expertise. That's telling your students in the community, I don't care enough about your culture and your language and your literature to care enough about it to include it. I'm just so busy and everything else is so important, but yours is not. If you include those pieces of literature, if you include the space in the curriculum and the time, and especially in the programming, you're saying this is valuable enough that I'm taking that time.
Thank you, Kim. You dropped the mic now, right? I could listen to this panel for the rest of the day, but unfortunately, we are near the end of our time. I want to thank all of our distinguished panelists for their time, expertise, and wisdom that they've shared with us today. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. Nice job. Special thanks to Alfredo Alcantar for his technical assistance, Nicole
Thumbs
Purviance.
up, Alfredo.
Nicole Purviance, our Director of Marketing, Vivian Zoe for her support, Steve Hargaden for his help and support in marketing the event. The full recording and transcription will be available within a few weeks. So part of our job as a Library and Information Science program is to bring people to the table, document them, transcribe them, and make sure that the pearls of wisdom shared today will continue on and be searchable via Google and other search engines. I also want to announce our Fill the Box campaign. So it's an IMLS Reading Nation Waterfall project, and I would encourage everyone to consider donating at least one book to the 5 Head Start centers that are serving preschool Native American children in our Reading Nation Waterfall project. I'm going to drop that link in the chat. It's myreadingnation.com/donations. We would appreciate your support. And finally, as my friend and colleague, Adam Lambert, Library Manager of the Kuala Boundary Public Library at the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian, has taught me Sagi, which is thanks in Eastern Band Cherokee Indian language, for joining us, and have a wonderful day.